The rain fell in sheets as I stood at my son Daniel's graveside, my tears mixing with the cold October downpour. At 68 years old, I never imagined I'd be burying my 38-year-old son. As the last mourners walked toward their cars, Jessica approached me, her black dress pristine despite the weather. "Stop your pathetic crying, Perry," she hissed, her green eyes as cold as the granite headstone. "Pack your bags. You have 30 days to get out of my house." My legs nearly buckled. "Daniel left everything to me," she continued, checking her phone. "Including the home you so foolishly gifted us." As she strutted away, whispering urgently into her phone, something twisted in my gut. My son's sudden heart attack had never made sense. 2 hours after watching dirt cover my son's casket, I pulled into the driveway of what had been home for the past 5 years. The guest house where I lived sat behind the main property, a modest one-bedroom structure I'd moved into after my wife, Martha, passed. I'd gifted the main house to Daniel and Jessica as a wedding present 8 years ago, thinking I was helping them start their life together. My key wouldn't turn in the lock. Confused, I jiggled it, thinking the rain had somehow affected the mechanism. Through the window, I could see my belongings still inside, but the lock had definitely been changed. Having trouble, Jessica's voice carried across the yard. She stood on the main house's back deck, her funeral attire replaced with designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. Her lawyer brother Marcus flanked her briefcase in hand, while her mother Diane sat at the patio table filing her nails with deliberate indifference. "The lock seems to be broken," I said, maintaining my composure despite the fury building in my chest. "It's not broken. I had them changed this morning." Jessica descended the deck stairs with practiced grace. "Marcus, give him the paperwork." Marcus stepped forward, his expression professionally neutral as he handed me an envelope. "Mr. Perry, this is a formal notice of eviction. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." I opened the envelope with steady hands, though my heart hammered against my ribs. The document was thorough, citing ownership transfer and demanding I remove all personal property within the specified time frame. "This can't be legal," I said quietly. "I've lived here for 5 years." "Without a lease," Marcus interjected. "You're a guest who has overstayed their welcome. The property belongs entirely to my client." "Your client?" I repeated, looking at Jessica. "Your sister-in-law, the woman who just buried her husband." Jessica's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Daniel updated his will 3 weeks ago. Everything goes to me. The house his business, all of it." She paused, savoring the moment. "I've already accepted an offer from Pinnacle Development. $3.2 million. They'll tear everything down and build condos." The family home where Daniel took his first steps, where Martha and I celebrated 35 anniversaries, reduced to rubble for condos. My hands trembled, but not from age or grief. Sarah loves this house. I managed thinking of my 6-year-old granddaughter. "Sarah will adjust," Jessica said with a dismissive wave. "Children are resilient." Diane finally looked up from her manicure. "Jessica's friend Brad has been so wonderful through all this. Such a supportive man. He even helped her find the developer." Brad. I'd heard the name mentioned at the funeral, seen a tall man hovering near Jessica during the service. Something flickered in my mind, a connection I couldn't quite grasp. "I'll need time to find somewhere to go," I said, folding the eviction notice carefully. 30 days, Marcus reminded me. "Not a day more. I'll have the sheriff here on day 31. Jessica touched her neck, drawing my attention to a diamond necklace I'd never seen before. The stones caught the late afternoon light, throwing tiny rainbows across her throat. "Marcus will let you into the guest house to pack some immediate necessities. You can schedule times to collect the rest." As Marcus unlocked the door, I noticed Jessica repeatedly checking her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. She smiled at whatever she read, a genuine expression of happiness that seemed grotesque given the circumstances. "Oh, and Perry," she called as I entered my home. "Don't bother calling Robert. I already told him everything's been handled legally. He sends his regrets about not making the funeral. Robert, my younger son, was deep undercover with the Detroit Police Department. I hadn't expected him to break cover, but Jessica's casual mention of him felt like another calculated blow. I packed mechanically, grabbing clothes, medications, and important papers. My mind raced while my hands performed familiar tasks. 3 weeks ago, Daniel had updated his will. 3 weeks ago, he'd been healthy playing basketball at the gym, planning Sarah's birthday party. In the garage, I pretended to check my old toolbox, while Jessica and her entourage waited impatiently. That's when I saw it. Daniel's work laptop tucked behind paint cans on a shelf. A yellow, sticky note clung to its surface, Daniel's distinctive handwriting, clear even in the dim light. "Dad, if something happens to me, check my life insurance. She doesn't know about the second policy." My blood turned to ice. I palmed the note, leaving the laptop for later retrieval. If Jessica found it, any evidence would disappear. "Hurry up, old man," Diane called from outside. "We have dinner reservations." I emerged with my suitcase, playing the role of the broken, defeated father. Jessica watched me load my car with satisfaction, radiating from every pore. "The guest house utilities will be shut off tomorrow," she announced. "For your own safety, of course. Wouldn't want you trying to squat." As I drove away from the home I'd built with my own hands, where I'd raised my sons and loved my wife, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Jessica stood in the driveway, Brad's arm around her waist. They were laughing. My son had been in the ground for less than 3 hours, and they were laughing. I pulled into the first motel I found a rundown place that rented by the week. As I sat on the thin mattress, Daniel's note trembled in my fingers. My grief transformed into something harder, colder. Jessica had made a critical mistake. She'd assumed I was just a weak old man drowning in sorrow. She didn't know about my 30 years as a forensic accountant with the IRS specializing in criminal investigations. She didn't know about my military intelligence background from Vietnam. Most importantly, she didn't know that Daniel had reached out to me with concerns about Jessica's behavior in recent months, concerns I'd dismissed as marital stress. I smoothed out the note and reached for my phone. First, I'd find this second insurance policy. Then I'd discover exactly what happened to my son. Jessica wanted me out in 30 days. Fine. But she had no idea what those 30 days would bring. The rain had stopped, but storm clouds still gathered on the horizon. As I stared at my son's handwriting, I made him a silent promise. Justice would come, no matter what mask it wore. The Riverside Motel became my temporary headquarters, its water-stained walls and flickering fluorescent lights a far cry from my comfortable guest house. 1 week had passed since Daniel's funeral, and I'd spent every waking hour following the thread he'd left me. Finding the second life insurance policy took 3 days of phone calls and document requests. Daniel had purchased it through his employer, separate from the policy Jessica knew about. $2 million with a single beneficiary, me. The accompanying letter from Daniel filed with the policy made his intentions crystal clear. Dad, it read, "If you're reading this, something has happened to me. Use this money to protect Sarah. Jessica has changed and I fear what she might do. Don't let her destroy our daughter the way she's trying to destroy me." I sat back in the creaking motel chair, processing the implications. Daniel had been planning an exit strategy. He'd known something was wrong, but hadn't lived long enough to execute it. My phone buzzed. Frank Sullivan's gravelly voice filled the room when I answered. "Perry, you better be sitting down for this. Frank and I had served together in Vietnam, survived things that would break lesser men. After the war, I'd gone into financial investigation while he'd become a private investigator. When I'd called him about Daniel, he'd dropped everything. "Tell me," I said. "Your daughter-in-law's been busy, real busy. That Brad Hoffman she's been crying on. They've been meeting for 8 months. I've got credit card records, hotel receipts, the works. 8 months? The timeline burned in my mind. Daniel started feeling sick about 6 months ago. Gets better, Frank continued. Hoffman's a pharmacist at Mercy General, access to all kinds of interesting substances. And here's the kicker. His first wife died 5 years ago. Sudden heart failure at age 32. My grip on the phone tightened. Was he investigated? Oh yeah, but the case went cold. No evidence of foul play, just suspicions. He collected a nice insurance payout and moved here from Kansas City 2 years later. I paced the small room, my mind connecting dots with frightening clarity. Frank, I need everything. Financial records, phone records, any surveillance footage you can get. Already on it. But Perry, there's something else. I put eyes on Jessica yesterday. She's already moved Hoffman into your house. The rage that surged through me was volcanic, but I forced it down. Emotion would cloud judgment. I needed to think like the investigator I'd been, not the grieving father I was. After ending the call with Frank, I drove to Syracuse Storage, where Daniel kept a unit for business overflow. Jessica didn't know about it. Daniel had mentioned it only to me when he'd needed help moving old furniture there last spring. Unit 47 held the usual detritus of life holiday decorations, old furniture boxes of tax records. But hidden behind a stack of file boxes, I found what Daniel had really wanted me to discover. A journal, leather-bound and filled with his careful script. I sat on a dusty ottoman and began to read each entry, another twist of the knife in my heart. March 15th, Jessica screamed at me for 2 hours about money. She wants to quit her job, says I should support her lifestyle. When I suggested a budget, she threw a glass at my head. April 3rd. The headaches are getting worse. Jessica makes my coffee every morning, insists on it. Says it's her way of showing love. But her eyes are so cold. April 27th. Caught Jessica on the phone with someone. She said it was her sister, but Emily hasn't spoken to her in years. When I questioned her, she accused me of being paranoid. May 15th, I'm scared. The chest pain started today. Jessica seemed almost happy when I told her. She suggested increasing my life insurance, just in case. I'm going to see a lawyer tomorrow without telling her. The entries continued documenting escalating emotional abuse, mysterious illnesses, and Jessica's increasingly erratic behavior. The final entry, dated just 4 days before his death, chilled me to the bone. Dad's birthday is next week. If something happens to me before then, know that I love you. I've hidden evidence in places Jessica won't think to look. The laptop has everything. Trust your instincts. They've never failed you. I photographed each page carefully before returning the journal to its hiding spot. This was evidence, but I needed more. Much more. That evening, as I sat in a diner picking at a sandwich, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. "Grandpa?" Sarah's small voice whispered. My heart clenched. "Sarah, sweetheart, where are you?" "In my closet. Mommy thinks I'm asleep." Her voice trembled. "Grandpa, Mommy's friend is scary. He yells at me when Mommy's not around. He said if I tell anyone, he'll make me disappear like Daddy did." The sandwich turned to ash in my mouth. "Sarah, listen carefully. Has he hurt you?" "He grabbed my arm real hard. It left marks, but Mommy said I was being dramatic." I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to drive straight to the house and remove my granddaughter by force. But that would play right into Jessica's hands. "Sarah, you're very brave for calling me. Can you do something else brave? Next time he grabs you, try to take a picture with your tablet. Hide it in your special folder." "The one with the password Daddy taught me." "That's right." Daniel had helped Sarah create a hidden folder for her drawings, password protected from Jessica's prying eyes. "And Sarah, I promise I'm going to fix this. You just need to be strong a little longer." "I miss Daddy," she whispered. "And I miss you." "I miss you too, sweetheart, so much. But I'll see you soon, okay?" After Sarah hung up, I sat in the booth until my hands stopped shaking. Then I called Frank. "I need you to dig deeper into Hoffman. Any complaints, any investigations, anything unusual at his pharmacy?" "You got something?" "He threatened my granddaughter." Frank's silence spoke volumes. Finally, he said, "I'll have preliminary info by morning. Perry, whatever you're planning, be careful. These people have already killed once." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Daniel's face, hearing Sarah's frightened whisper. By dawn, I'd made my decision. Jessica thought she'd won by evicting me by taking everything Daniel had built. She thought I was just a broken old man who would slink away in defeat. She was about to learn why I'd been the IRS's top criminal investigator for 3 decades. The same skills that had taken down mob bosses and corporate criminals would now be turned on the woman who'd murdered my son. But I wouldn't act in anger or haste. No, I'd be methodical, patient, thorough. I'd build a case so airtight that Jessica and her pharmacist boyfriend would never see daylight again. As the sun rose over the motel parking lot, I opened a new notebook and began outlining my investigation. Financial records, medical histories, phone records, surveillance footage. I'd need it all, and I'd get it piece by piece while playing the part of the defeated old man Jessica expected to see. The second insurance policy Daniel had hidden was more than money. It was his way of ensuring I had the resources to fight back, to protect Sarah, to seek justice. $2 million could buy a lot of investigation, a lot of expert testimony, a lot of truth. I looked at the photo of Daniel I kept in my wallet, taken last Christmas. He stood beside the tree in the living room, Sarah on his shoulders, both of them laughing at something off camera. That house, that moment, that family. Jessica had destroyed it all for money and a new life with her lover. But she'd made one fatal error. She'd left a witness alive. Me. And I was just getting started. 2 weeks had crawled by since Daniel's funeral, and the walls of my motel room were now covered with papers, photos, and timeline charts. It looked like the war room it had become. Every piece of evidence I uncovered painted a darker picture of Jessica's calculated evil. My IRS connections proved invaluable. Tom Rodriguez, who'd worked under me for 15 years before I retired, met me at a coffee shop downtown. "Perry, you look like hell," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "Feel worse," I admitted. "Tom, I need a favor. Unofficial." He studied me over his coffee cup. "This about Daniel. Jessica's been moving money. I need to know where and how much." Tom glanced around the nearly empty shop. "You know I can't officially access records without cause." "I'm not asking officially." He was quiet for a long moment. "Give me 48 hours, and Perry, whatever you find, make it stick. Daniel was a good man." While Tom worked his magic, Frank's investigation bore fruit. He arrived at my motel room carrying a thick manila envelope and wearing a grim expression. "Sit down for this," he said, spreading documents across the bed. "Brad Hoffman is dirty as they come. 3 complaints at his previous pharmacy for inventory discrepancies, specifically cardiac medications going missing. The amounts were small enough to avoid major investigation, but the pattern's there. I studied the pharmacy records. Digitalis, among others. Interesting thing about Digitalis, in small doses over time it mimics natural heart disease. The victim feels progressively worse, attributes it to stress or age. By the time acute symptoms appear, it's too late. "Daniel complained of fatigue for months," I said quietly. "Chest pains, shortness of breath. His doctor said it was stress from work." Frank pulled out another set of papers. "Here's where it gets interesting. I tracked Hoffman's purchases at a chemical supply company. He's buying foxglove seeds. Guess what foxglove contains? Digitalis." The word tasted like poison in my mouth. Bingo! He's literally growing his own supply. A knock at the door interrupted us. I checked the peephole, then opened it to a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, tired eyes, nervous energy. "Mr. Perry, I'm Carol Hoffman, Brad's ex-wife." Frank and I exchanged glances as I let her in. She perched on the edge of a chair, clutching her purse like a lifeline. "I heard about your son," she began. "When I learned Brad was involved with his widow, I had to come forward. I've lived in fear for 5 years, but I can't let another family suffer. Tell me everything, I said gently. Carol's story unfolded like a horror novel. Brad had been charming at first, attentive, romantic. But after their wedding, he'd become controlling, manipulative. Then came the life insurance policies, his insistence that she update her will, his sudden interest in her morning coffee routine. I started feeling sick about a year into the marriage, she said. Dizzy spells, heart palpitations. Brad was so concerned, so caring. He made special health smoothies, insisted I take vitamins he provided. I thought he was trying to help. What made you suspicious? Frank asked. I caught him grinding plants in the garage one night. When I asked about it, he said it was for the garden, but I found his notebook later. It had dosage calculations notes about absorption rates. I'm a nurse, Mr. Perry. I recognized what he was doing. You confronted him? She shook her head. I ran, packed what I could while he was at work, and disappeared. Changed my name, moved across the country. I've been hiding ever since. Would you testify to this? I asked. Fear flashed in her eyes. He'll kill me. He's going to kill others if we don't stop him, I said. My granddaughter lives in that house with him. Carol's resolve visibly strengthened. Okay, yes, I'll testify, but I need protection. After Carol left, I sat processing this new information. The pieces were falling into place, but I needed more. That's when my phone rang. Sarah's school. Mr. Perry, this is Principal Watson. There's been an incident with Sarah. My blood ran cold. Is she hurt? She's physically fine, but emotionally distressed. Her mother picked her up early, but Sarah's teacher noticed bruising on her arms. When asked, Sarah became hysterical. She kept asking for you. I'll be right there. Mr. Perry, her mother has already collected her, but I think you should know we're mandated reporters. Child Services will be notified. A spark of hope. If Child Services got involved, it might provide legal cover for me to intervene. I thanked the principal and immediately called my lawyer, William Chen. Perry, I've been expecting your call, William said. Jessica's lawyer brother has been throwing his weight around town. What do you need? Emergency custody petition for Sarah. The school's reporting abuse. I'll file within the hour. Document everything, Perry. We'll need solid evidence. That afternoon, Tom Rodriguez called with the financial intelligence I'd requested. Your daughter-in-law's been busy, he reported. 6 offshore accounts opened in the last 8 months. She's been siphoning money from Daniel's business accounts. Small amounts, but it adds up to nearly $400,000. Daniel never noticed. The transactions were disguised as vendor payments. She had signing authority on the business accounts. Perry, there's more. She's got a plane ticket booked. One way to Costa Rica, leaving in 2 weeks. Just her 3 tickets. Her Hoffman and get this, Hoffman's sister in Dallas. No ticket for Sarah. The implication hit like a sledgehammer. Jessica was planning to abandon my granddaughter. That evening, I made a decision that could backfire spectacularly. I needed inside information, and only one person could provide it. I called Robert in Detroit. Dad. His voice was worried. I got word about the custody filing. What's going on? I explained everything watching the parking lot for suspicious vehicles. When I finished, Robert's silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. I'm coming home, he finally said. You're undercover. You can't break cover for this. Watch me. Dad, if Jessica killed Daniel, if she's hurting Sarah, then my cover means nothing. Family comes first. Robert, I need you to work within the system. Can you request emergency leave? Make it official. Give me 24 hours. I'll make it happen. And Dad, start recording everything. Every interaction, every conversation. Michigan's a one-party consent state for recordings. After hanging up, I sat in the gathering darkness of my motel room. The investigation was accelerating, pieces clicking together like tumblers in a lock. Jessica had been patient, methodical in her murder of my son. She'd played a long game, thinking herself untouchable. But she'd underestimated the resources of a grieving father with 30 years of investigative experience. She'd dismissed me as a weak old man broken by loss and easily discarded. Frank knocked on my door, interrupting my brooding. Got something else, he said, entering with his laptop. Remember you asked about security footage from Daniel's gym? He opened the laptop showing grainy parking lot footage. This is from the morning Daniel died. Watch the silver sedan. I leaned closer. The sedan pulled up beside Daniel's car. Two figures met briefly between the vehicles. Even in the poor quality video, Jessica's blonde hair was recognizable. The other figure? Tall, thin Brad Hoffman. Now watch this, Frank said, zooming in as much as the footage allowed. Brad handed Jessica something small. She tucked it into her purse, then leaned up to kiss him. Not a friendly peck. A passionate embrace there in the parking lot while Daniel worked out inside, unaware that his death warrant had just been signed. Can we enhance this enough to see what he gave her? Already sent it to a friend who specializes in video enhancement. Should know by tomorrow. I stared at the frozen image of my daughter-in-law kissing her lover, holding what was likely the poison that would kill my son, hours later. Rage threatened to overwhelm me, but I forced it down. Rage was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not yet. Frank, I need one more thing. Can you get someone inside the house? A repair person delivery driver. Someone with a reason to be there. Frank grinned, the expression sharp as a blade. Already arranged. Cable company's doing routine maintenance tomorrow. My guy will have full access to the house for at least an hour. Tell him to look for foxglove plants, any unusual substances in the kitchen, and if possible, get photos of any medications or chemicals. Done. Frank closed his laptop. Perry, we're building a solid case, but we need that smoking gun. Something that ties it all together. I thought of Daniel's laptop still hidden in the garage. I might know where to find it, but I need the right moment to retrieve it. After Frank left, I spread all my evidence across the bed. Financial fraud, adultery, prior, suspicious death, child abuse, and now video evidence of Jessica with Brad the morning Daniel died. The web was extensive, but webs could be broken if you pulled the wrong thread. I needed to be strategic patient. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. A photo of Sarah asleep in her bed. The message beneath it read, "Stop digging or she disappears." I stared at the threat, fury, and fear warring in my chest. They'd just made a critical mistake. The photo showed Sarah's room, including the unique lamp Martha had painted for her before she died. Only someone inside the house could have taken that photo. Brad or Jessica had just created evidence of their threat against a child. I forwarded the message to Robert and William, then added it to my growing file. They thought they could intimidate me with threats against Sarah. They'd just provided more ammunition for their own prosecution. Tomorrow would mark 2 weeks since the funeral. 2 weeks of investigation, of building a case, of playing the broken old man while sharpening my knives in the darkness. Jessica wanted me out in 30 days. She'd get her wish. But when I left, I'd be taking my granddaughter with me, and Jessica would be trading her designer clothes for prison orange. The net was tightening. Soon, very soon, it would be time to pull it closed. 3 weeks had passed since I'd stood in the rain at Daniel's grave. 3 weeks of investigation planning and careful maneuvering. Now, with only 1 week left before the eviction deadline, it was time to spring the trap I'd been meticulously constructing. The restraining order Jessica had filed against me actually worked in my favor. It legally required me to stay away, which meant she'd grown complacent, believing I was cowering in my motel room. She had no idea I'd been orchestrating her downfall from the shadows. Robert had arrived 2 days ago, his undercover assignment officially suspended for a family emergency. We met at Frank's office, away from prying eyes. "You look older," Robert said, embracing me. At 35, he had Daniel's build, but Martha's sharp features and calculating mind. "Grief ages a man," I replied, "but rage keeps him going." We spent hours reviewing the evidence. Robert, with his law enforcement expertise, helped identify the strongest elements for prosecution. "The financial fraud alone would put her away for years," he said, studying Tom's reports. But we want murder charges to stick. That's where this comes in, I said, producing Daniel's laptop. I'd retrieved it during my final visit to collect belongings, Jessica watching from the doorway with smug satisfaction as I'd appeared broken and defeated. Robert booted up the laptop, navigating to Daniel's hidden files with the password I'd found in his journal. What we discovered exceeded our darkest expectations. Daniel had been recording. Audio files dated back 6 months, documenting Jessica's escalating abuse, her threats, her mentions of Brad. The final recording made the night before his death captured Jessica on the phone. "Tomorrow morning, baby. Yes, I'll use the whole vial. No, he won't taste it in his coffee. Brad, stop worrying. In 24 hours, we'll be free. The old man gets nothing and we get everything." Robert and I sat in stunned silence after the recording ended. Daniel had known. He'd known and still drunk that coffee, perhaps hoping to survive, perhaps ensuring there would be evidence. "This is enough," Robert said quietly. "With everything else, this is enough for murder 1. But I wasn't finished. I want them to confess. I want them to feel safe enough to brag about it. That's when I explained my final gambit. The house was now wired with tiny cameras, courtesy of Frank's cable technician. Every room, every angle, all feeding to a secure server. Jessica and Brad had no idea their every move was being watched, recorded, preserved for prosecution. "You're going to the house?" Robert asked, concerned. "That violates the restraining order. The eviction is in 4 days. I have a legal right to retrieve my belongings under supervision. Williams already arranged it with the court. Jessica has to be present along with her lawyer." "And you think they'll confess while you're there?" I smiled, the expression feeling foreign after weeks of grief. "They'll confess after I leave, when they think they've won." The plan required precise timing and careful acting. I'd spent 3 days practicing my role, the broken old man, defeated and pathetic. I'd even stopped shaving, letting myself look as disheveled as possible. When eviction day arrived, I'd be exactly what Jessica expected to see. Frank's surveillance revealed Jessica and Brad's routines. They'd grown comfortable, even lazy. Brad spent his days at the house, while Jessica planned their new life. They'd already listed the property with a realtor, scheduling showings for after my eviction. Most importantly, Carol Hoffman had agreed to testify. We'd arranged protective custody through Robert's department. She'd provided detailed accounts of Brad's previous poisoning attempt, including medical records showing her mysterious symptoms that vanished after she fled. The exhumation order came through on Tuesday. Daniel's body would be tested for digitalis and other cardiac glycosides. The process would take another week, but preliminary results were expected sooner. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected ally. Dr. Patricia Hemming, Daniel's physician, called, asking to meet. We gathered at a discreet location. "I've been reviewing Daniel's medical history," she said, spreading charts before us. In hindsight, his symptoms were textbook digitalis poisoning. I should have caught it, but it was so gradual, so carefully dosed. "You couldn't have known," I assured her. "But I should have. Mr. Perry, I'll testify to this. I've already documented my findings for the medical board. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." Another piece locked into place. That evening, I prepared for the final act. Tomorrow, I'd return to the house one last time. Everything hinged on playing my part perfectly. Robert would be positioned nearby with a federal team ready to move on our signal. The FBI had taken interest once we demonstrated interstate financial fraud. Jessica's offshore accounts and Brad's Kansas connections made this federal jurisdiction. "Dad, you sure about this?" Robert asked as we finalized details. "We have enough to arrest them now." "I want Sarah safe first," I said, "and I want them to hang themselves with their own words. When we move, I want it to be devastating, complete. No plea bargains, no reduced sentences." That night, I barely slept. I thought about Daniel, about the recording where he'd sounded so tired, so defeated. He'd fought alone trying to protect Sarah while battling a monster in his own home. But he hadn't been alone, not really. He'd known I'd find the truth, trusted me to finish what he'd started. Thursday morning dawned clear and cold. Eviction day. I dressed carefully in old clothes, ensuring I looked every bit the broken-down father Jessica expected. The slight stoop to my shoulders, the tremor in my hands, all carefully practiced deceptions. As I drove toward the house for the last time, I thought about justice. Not the clean clinical justice of courtrooms, but the raw primal justice of a father protecting his family. Jessica and Brad thought they'd won. They believed their plan was perfect, their crime undetectable. They'd forgotten one crucial truth. There's nothing more dangerous than a patient man with nothing left to lose. The cameras were rolling. The FBI was standing by. The evidence was overwhelming. All that remained was the final performance, the last act in a tragedy that would end with Jessica and Brad's complete destruction. I pulled into the driveway of my former home, noting Brad's car parked brazenly in Daniel's spot. Through the window, I could see them moving around inside, preparing for their victory celebration. Let them celebrate. Let them gloat. Let them believe they'd murdered my son and stolen his life without consequence. Their reckoning was about to begin. I parked my car and took a deep breath, settling into character. Time to play the broken old man one last time. Time to set the trap that would spring shut with all the force of a father's fury. Jessica wanted me out. She was about to get her wish, along with something she never expected. Justice served cold as my son's grave. The morning of the eviction arrived with deceptive calm. I sat in my car outside the house at exactly 9 o'clock, as legally required. Through the windshield, I could see Jessica peer through the curtains, checking to ensure I was alone. She didn't notice the utility van parked 3 houses down where Robert and his FBI team waited. William Chen, my lawyer, arrived moments later. "You ready for this, Perry?" "3 weeks ready," I muttered, adjusting the tiny recording device hidden in my shirt button. Marcus emerged from the house first, his lawyer's arrogance on full display. Behind him, Jessica strutted out wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Brad lingered in the doorway, trying to look casual, but failing to hide his nervous energy. "Mr. Perry," Marcus began formally, "you have 1 hour to collect your remaining belongings from the guest house. Ms. Morrison will supervise to ensure nothing is removed from the main property." Ms. Morrison. Not Mrs. Perry, as she'd been for 8 years. I let my shoulders slump further, adding a shuffle to my walk as we proceeded to the guest house. "Don't try anything stupid, old man," Jessica hissed once we were out of Marcus's earshot. "Just take your junk and go." I began packing slowly, methodically, playing my part. My hands shook as I folded clothes, packed pictures. When I accidentally dropped a photo of Daniel, I let tears fall. "Pathetic," Jessica muttered. "Your son was weak just like you." I said nothing, continuing my performance. Through the window, I caught Brad moving through the main house, and I knew every step was being recorded by our hidden cameras. After 40 minutes of packing, I made my calculated move. "I need something from Sarah's room," I said quietly. "Her grandmother's music box. It was Martha's, then Daniel's, now it should be Sarah's." "Absolutely not," Jessica snapped. "Nothing from the main house." "Please." I let my voice break. "It's all I have left of them." Jessica rolled her eyes, but looked at Marcus, who shrugged. 5 minutes. I'll accompany you." Perfect. Inside the main house, I shuffled toward Sarah's room, noting the changes. Brad's belongings scattered everywhere, Jessica's redecorating already in progress. The home Martha and I had built being transformed into something unrecognizable. In Sarah's room, I retrieved the music box with trembling hands. As I turned to leave, I played my final card. "Jessica," I said softly, "I know about the insurance policy." She froze. "What?" "The one Daniel hid from you. $2 million. I watched her face cycle through emotions. Shock, greed, fury. It's mine. He left it to me. You're lying. I pulled out a copy of the policy documentation. It's real, but I'm tired, Jessica. Broken. I don't want to fight anymore. Her eyes glittered with avarice. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe we can make a deal. I sign the money over to you. You let me see Sarah sometimes. Get out, she said, but I could see the wheels turning. Just get out. I shuffled back through the house, clutching the music box. In the living room, Brad had appeared, obviously having overheard our conversation. As we reached the front door, I turned for one last look. This house killed my son, I said quietly. The stress, the pressure, his heart just couldn't take it. Jessica and Brad exchanged a look I caught in the mirror by the door. Satisfaction, amusement, pride. Hearts are fragile things. Brad said his first words to me ever. Sometimes they just stop. I nodded sadly and left William escorting me to my car. As we drove away, I maintained character until we'd turned the corner. Then I pulled out my phone. Robert, Phase 2. Copy that, team standing by. The plan was simple. Jessica's greed would be her downfall. The mention of $2 million would be irresistible, especially when dangled by a broken old man. She'd research it, confirm it was real, then make her move. We didn't have to wait long. 3 hours later, Jessica called William's office. My client is willing to discuss visitation arrangements, William reported to me. She suggested meeting this evening at the house. Tell her I'll come by to sign papers. Make it clear I'm desperate to see Sarah, willing to sign anything. That evening, I returned to the house once more. This time, Jessica greeted me with a smile that would have looked warm to anyone who didn't know better. Brad stood beside her, champagne already on the table. Perry, come in, she purred. Let's discuss this like civilized people. The house felt like a tomb. Daniel's pictures had been removed, replaced with photos of Jessica and Brad. They'd erased my son from his own home. Where's Sarah? I asked. At a friend's house. Jessica lied smoothly. I knew from surveillance she was upstairs, locked in her room as usual when Brad was around. Let's focus on business first. She produced documents clearly prepared by Marcus in record time. In exchange for signing over the life insurance benefits, I would receive supervised visitation with Sarah once a month. Once a month, I let desperation creep into my voice. She's my granddaughter. Take it or leave it, Brad interjected. Or we can make it 0 visits. I pretended to struggle with the decision, then reached for the pen with shaking hands. As I started to sign, I accidentally knocked over my water glass. I'm so sorry, I stammered, standing quickly. Let me get something to clean this. Sit down, Jessica snapped. Brad, get some towels. As Brad left the room, Jessica leaned forward. Just sign it, old man. Take your crumbs and be grateful. I signed the papers with a shaky signature that would never hold up in court. Jessica snatched them away triumphantly. There, she said. Now get out. You can see Sarah next month. Maybe. Brad returned with towels, and I noticed him pour champagne for Jessica and himself. They were already celebrating. To new beginnings. Brad toasted, not even waiting for me to leave. And profitable endings, Jessica added with a laugh. I stood slowly playing my final card. You know Daniel figured it out at the end. They both froze. Figured what out? Jessica asked carefully. About the coffee, how you were poisoning him. He told me everything that last day. You're senile, Jessica said, but her voice had gone tight. Daniel had a heart condition. Did he? I asked softly. Or did someone give him one? Brad stepped forward aggressively. You need to leave, now! Oh, I'm going, I said, shuffling toward the door. But Daniel knew Jessica. He knew about you and Brad, about the poison, about everything. He documented it all. I'm too old and tired to do anything with it, but he knew. I opened the door, pausing for one last moment. Enjoy your champagne. Daniel can't. As I walked to my car, I could hear them arguing inside. The seeds were planted. They'd spend the night wondering what Daniel had documented, what I might know, whether they were truly safe. In the van down the street, Robert's voice crackled through my earpiece. "Outstanding performance, Dad. They're taking the bait." I drove back to the motel and waited. The cameras would capture everything from here. Jessica and Brad, feeling threatened but emboldened by my apparent weakness, would reveal themselves. It didn't take long. By 10 that evening, Frank called. "You need to see this feed." On my laptop, I watched Jessica and Brad in the living room. The champagne had loosened their tongues, and my visit had rattled them just enough. "The old fool knows nothing," Brad insisted. "If he had evidence, he'd have used it." "But what if Daniel did document something?" Jessica paced anxiously. "So what dead men can't testify?" Brad pulled her close. "Baby, we did it. We won. That pathetic old man just signed over $2 million. Jessica relaxed into his arms. God, Daniel was so stupid, every morning drinking his coffee like a good boy. "Dodge an arm." The digitalis was genius, Brad boasted. Completely undetectable after metabolization. Even if they exhumed him, they'd find nothing. Unless they tested hair samples, Jessica mused. But who's going to order that for a natural death? Exactly. And even if they did, it would just show therapeutic levels. After all, his doctor prescribed heart medication. They laughed, clinking glasses again. The camera caught every word, every admission, every detail of their conspiracy to murder my son. "You know what the best part was," Jessica said now, drunk on champagne and victory. "That morning when I gave him the final dose, he actually thanked me for the coffee. Thanked me for killing him." "Stop!" Brad laughed. "You're terrible." "Oh, please, like you didn't enjoy watching him deteriorate. Mr. Perfect with his moral high ground and family values." "The only value that matters is net worth," Brad agreed. "And now we have it all. The house, the business, the insurance money. Don't forget the brat," Jessica added. "Though not for long. Your sister's still willing to take her." "Already arranged. We'll be in Costa Rica before anyone notices she's gone." They continued planning their future, each word another nail in their coffin. They discussed the murder in detail, Brad explaining how he'd calculated dosages, Jessica describing how she'd masked the bitter taste with flavored creamer. At midnight, I called Robert. "We have enough. More than enough. Teams are moving into position. Dad, you did it." "Daniel did it," I corrected. "He gathered the initial evidence. I just finished what he started." "Either way, justice is about to be served. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be intense." But I couldn't rest. I sat in the darkness thinking about Daniel, about justice, about the morning that would bring Jessica and Brad's world crashing down. They thought they'd committed the perfect murder, thought they'd won everything. They were about to learn that some victories are just delayed defeats. As dawn approached, I finally allowed myself a small smile. The trap hadn't just been sprung, it had snapped shut with devastating finality. Jessica wanted me out. She was about to get her wish along with something she never expected. Federal agents at her door, handcuffs on her wrists, and a lifetime to regret underestimating a grieving father's fury. The sun was rising on their last day of freedom, and I would be there to watch it set on their dreams. Dawn broke crisp and clear on day 30 of my eviction notice. By law, I should have been permanently removed from the property by now. Instead, I sat in an FBI surveillance van watching monitors as 24 federal agents surrounded my former home. Robert checked his weapon beside me, his jaw set with professional determination. "Remember, Dad let us handle this. You're here as a witness only." I nodded, though my hands itched for more active participation. 30 years of investigation had led to this moment. The net we'd cast was about to haul in its catch. At exactly 6 in the morning, Robert gave the signal. "All teams execute." The operation unfolded with military precision. Agents swarmed the property from all angles. The battering ram wasn't necessary. Marcus had made the mistake of spending the night. and he opened the door in silk pajamas, his face cycling from arrogance to confusion to fear. FBI, we have warrants. The lead agent's voice carried across the quiet street. From my position in the van, I watched the body camera feeds as agents flooded inside. Jessica's scream pierced the morning air. Brad tried to run out the back door only to be tackled by waiting agents. Perry! Jessica shrieked as agents cuffed her. You bastard, this is harassment. Marcus, do something. Marcus, now cuffed himself, could only stammer about civil rights violations. He'd learned soon enough that conspiracy to commit murder trumped his bar certification. Through it all, one sound made my heart clench: Sarah's terrified crying from upstairs. A female agent trained in child trauma response went to her immediately. It's okay, sweetie. I heard through the audio feed. Your grandfather sent us. You're safe now. The house became a crime scene within minutes. Evidence techs swarmed through, cataloging everything. The foxglove plants Brad had been growing in the basement. The vials of digitalis hidden in the freezer behind frozen vegetables. Jessica's laptop with its treasure trove of incriminating emails. I was finally allowed to enter after the initial sweep. Jessica, Brad, and Marcus sat cuffed in the living room agent's standing guard. Jessica's perfect makeup was smeared, her designer nightgown wrinkled. She looked at me with pure hatred. You, she spat. You pathetic old fool. You set us up. I said nothing, maintaining the dignity she'd tried to steal. Robert entered holding an evidence bag. Jessica Morrison, Brad Hoffman. Marcus Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, murder in the first degree, wire fraud, money laundering, child endangerment, and about 15 other charges I'll detail at the station. This is entrapment, Marcus protested. My client was manipulated by a vindictive relative. Your client, Robert said coldly, was recorded confessing to poisoning Daniel Perry over a period of 6 months. We have video, audio, financial records, and physical evidence. You personally forged legal documents and participated in fraud. I'd stop talking if I were you. Brad had gone pale. I want a lawyer. You'll get one, Robert assured him. You'll need a good one. As they were let out, neighbors gathered on the street. The same people who'd attended Daniel's funeral watched his killers dragged away in handcuffs. Justice witnessed by the community they'd deceived. But the revelations were just beginning. At the federal building downtown, I watched from behind one-way glass as the conspirators were interrogated separately. Brad broke first, just as we'd predicted. Faced with evidence of his first wife's murder and Daniel's poisoning, he desperately tried to shift blame. It was all Jessica, he claimed. She seduced me, manipulated me. She planned everything. His interrogator agent Patricia Stone slid photos across the table. These are from your computer, Dr. Hoffman. Research on digitalis toxicity dating back 3 years. Your notes on dosage calculations. Your online purchases of foxglove seeds. Brad's attorney whispered urgently in his ear, but the damage was done. Over 4 hours, Brad detailed the entire conspiracy from his first meeting with Jessica at a pharmacy conference to their plan to murder Daniel. She complained about him constantly, Brad said. Said he was controlling, that she deserved better. When she learned about his life insurance, she became obsessed. And you just went along with it? Agent Stone asked. I loved her, Brad said pathetically, and she promised we'd be together rich-free. Meanwhile, Jessica maintained her innocence with stunning audacity. Even faced with her own recorded confession, she insisted it was taken out of context, that she'd been joking that Perry had manipulated the situation. Her story crumbled when Agent Stone played Daniel's recordings. I can't take much more of this. Daniel's exhausted voice filled the room. She's poisoning me, I know it. But if I confront her, she'll take Sarah and disappear. Dad, if you're listening to this, please protect Sarah. Please find justice for me. For the first time, Jessica's mask cracked. He recorded me every day for 6 months, Agent Stone confirmed. He knew exactly what you were doing. He stayed to protect his daughter and gather evidence. He died a hero while you murdered him like a coward." Jessica's attorney tried to negotiate, but what could he offer? The evidence was overwhelming, damning irrefutable. By noon, Jessica had been formally charged with first-degree murder with special circumstances. Marcus faced his own nightmare. The FBI had uncovered years of financial crimes connected to Jessica. He'd helped her steal from elderly clients at her previous job, forged documents to hide assets, and ultimately participated in Daniel's murder by creating fraudulent legal papers. "I didn't know about the murder," he insisted. "I thought it was just about money." "You created a fake will 3 weeks before Daniel died," his interrogator noted. "Rather convenient timing." The investigation expanded by the hour. The exhumation results came back positive for massive amounts of digitalis. Hair analysis showed chronic poisoning over 6 months, exactly matching the timeline in Daniel's journal. Dr. Patricia Hemming testified that Daniel's symptoms were textbook digitalis toxicity, but administered so cleverly that it mimicked natural heart disease. "Whoever did this had extensive pharmacological knowledge," she stated. Carol Hoffman, Brad's ex-wife, provided crucial testimony about Brad's previous poisoning attempt. Protected by federal marshals, she detailed Brad's obsession with untraceable poisons, his experiments with plant-based toxins, his calculated approach to murder. "He told me once that the perfect murder was one that looked like natural causes," Carol testified. He said modern forensics made violence obsolete, but chemistry was eternal. By evening, the full scope of the conspiracy emerged. Jessica and Brad had planned everything meticulously. The affair began at a pharmaceutical conference where Jessica had attended with Daniel. Brad had been immediately attracted to her, and she'd seen in him the tool for her freedom. They'd researched digitalis together, with Brad providing the expertise and Jessica providing the opportunity. Every morning for 6 months, she dosed Daniel's coffee with carefully measured amounts. Not enough to kill immediately, but sufficient to cause cumulative damage. The goal, Brad had written in a journal found in his apartment, is to create chronic heart failure that appears natural. Small doses over time, allowing the body to partially metabolize each dose while building up tissue damage. The financial crimes were equally elaborate. Jessica had systematically drained Daniel's business accounts, moving money through shell companies to offshore banks. Marcus had helped create false invoices and vendor payments to hide the theft. The plan had been to murder Daniel, collect his insurance, sell the house, and disappear to Costa Rica with new identities. Sarah would have been abandoned, or worse. The only flaw in their plan had been Daniel himself. His suspicion, his courage to document everything despite knowing he was dying. That night, I finally got to see Sarah. Child Services brought her to a safe location where we could meet. She ran into my arms, sobbing. "Grandpa, I was so scared. Mommy's friend said you were never coming back." "I'm here now, sweetheart." I held her tight. "And you're coming home with me." "What about Mommy?" How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her mother murdered her father? Mommy made some very bad choices. She has to go away for a while. Forever. I stroked her hair, feeling the weight of truth. Maybe, baby, maybe forever. Sarah would need therapy time, love, to heal from this trauma. But she was safe now. Daniel's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. As I carried Sarah to Robert's car, I thought about justice. Not the clean, abstract concept I'd pursued for 30 years with the IRS, but the messy, painful reality of it. Daniel was still gone. Sarah had lost both parents. The house held too many dark memories to ever be home again. But Jessica and Brad would never hurt anyone again. Their arrogance had been their downfall, their cruelty, their conviction. They'd gambled everything on the assumption that a grieving old man would be too broken to fight back. They'd learned far too late that a father's love doesn't end with death. It transforms into something harder, sharper, a weapon against those who would harm his family. Daniel had known he was dying. He'd felt the poison working through his system day by day, but he'd endured it to protect Sarah, to gather evidence to ensure justice would find his killers. In the end, he'd won. Through his courage and sacrifice, he'd saved his daughter and avenged his own murder. I'd simply been the instrument of his justice, completing what he'd started. Tomorrow would bring more revelations as investigators dug deeper into Jessica and Brad's crimes. There would be trials sentencing the long journey of legal justice. But tonight, Sarah was safe in my arms, and Daniel could rest in peace. The trap had closed, the revelations had destroyed the killer's facade, and truth had finally overcome deception. Justice served as cold as the coffee that had killed my son, but satisfying in its completeness. 6 months had passed since federal agents dragged Jessica from our family home in handcuffs. The October morning was crisp and clear, much like the day we'd buried Daniel, but now the sunshine felt like hope rather than mockery. Sarah and I stood in the backyard, planting a Japanese maple tree in Daniel's memory. She wore her school uniform, her dark hair pulled back in the braids I'd finally learned to do properly. The house around us had been transformed, cleansed of Jessica's presence, and filled with warmth again. "Is this the right spot, Grandpa?" Sarah asked, her small hands dirty from digging. "Perfect," I assured her. "Your dad loved this corner of the yard. He used to read here when he was your age." We worked together in comfortable silence, grandfather and granddaughter bound by loss, but building something new. The trials were over. Justice had been served in full measure. Jessica had received life without parole for first-degree murder, with special circumstances. The judge had been particularly moved by Daniel's recordings, his quiet heroism in documenting his own murder to protect his daughter. Jessica had shown no remorse during the trial, maintaining her innocence even as Brad testified against her in exhaustive detail. Brad himself received 40 years for his role in Daniel's murder and the attempted poisoning of his first wife. During sentencing, he'd broken down crying, begging forgiveness that would never come. His tears meant nothing measured against Daniel's suffering. Marcus had been disbarred and sentenced to 10 years for conspiracy and fraud. His legal career destroyed, his reputation in ruins. He'd lost everything he'd valued. Prison would be especially hard for a former prosecutor. Jessica's mother, Diane, had fled to Mexico the day after the arrests, but was caught trying to board a flight to Switzerland. She received 5 years for money laundering and conspiracy after the fact. Even from prison, she wrote letters proclaiming Jessica's innocence that we threw away unopened. The financial recovery had been swift. The federal government seized all of Jessica's hidden assets, the offshore accounts she'd filled with stolen money returned to Daniel's estate. The $2 million insurance policy she'd tried to steal became the foundation of Sarah's college fund. The house once tainted by murder had been reclaimed as a home. Robert had transferred permanently to the local FBI office, living in the guest house where I'd once stayed. Having him close brought comfort to both Sarah and me. We were building a new kind of family, smaller but stronger, forged in truth rather than deception. "Grandpa," Sarah said as we patted soil around the tree's base, "why did Mommy hurt Daddy?" I'd known this question would come. We'd agreed with her therapist to answer honestly but age-appropriately when she asked. "Sometimes people want things so much they forget what's really important," I said carefully. "Your mommy wanted money and a different life. She made terrible choices that hurt people. But Daddy loved her." "He did, and he loved you most of all. That's why he made sure you'd be safe." Sarah considered this with the solemnity only a 6-year-old could manage. "I miss him." "Me too, sweetheart, every day. But we have each other," she said, taking my hand with her dirty one. "And Uncle Robert, and Mrs. Patricia next door makes good cookies." I smiled at her resilience. Children could heal in ways adults couldn't, finding light in the darkness. Daniel would be proud of his daughter's strength. As we watered our newly planted tree, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The investigation, the evidence gathering the careful trap that had ensnared Jessica and Brad completely. But mostly I thought about Daniel, not as a victim, but as the hero he'd been. He'd known he was dying. Each morning taking that poisoned coffee from Jessica's hands, he'd made a choice. He could have confronted her, could have run, could have tried to save himself. Instead, he'd chosen to save Sarah to ensure justice would find his killers, even if he couldn't live to see it. The memorial foundation we'd established in his name had already helped dozens of domestic abuse victims escape dangerous situations. Daniel's story, once public, had resonated with those trapped by manipulative partners. His courage in documenting abuse while enduring it had inspired others to seek help. "Can we go inside now?" Sarah asked. "I want to show Uncle Robert my spelling test. I got 100. "Of course, and Sarah, your dad would be so proud of you." She smiled a real smile that reached her eyes. "I know. Sometimes I dream about him and he tells me." As we walked inside, I felt a presence, a warmth that might have been imagination, but felt like more. Daniel's sacrifice had saved his daughter exposed killers and ensured justice. But more than that, it had taught us about the power of love to transcend even death. The house was full of life again. Robert's laughter from the kitchen, Sarah's excited chatter about school, the neighbor children playing in the yard. Where poison and betrayal had once festered, love and truth now flourished. That evening, as Sarah did homework at the kitchen table and Robert cooked dinner, I sat in Daniel's old chair and opened his journal to the last entry. "If someone reads this, it means I'm gone. Please know I'm not afraid. I'm heartbroken that I won't see Sarah grow up, but I'm not afraid. I've left enough evidence to bury Jessica and Brad. Dad will know what to do. He always does. Take care of my little girl. Tell her every day that her daddy loved her more than all the stars in the sky. And tell her to be brave, be kind, and always choose truth over easy lies." I closed the journal and went to help with dinner. Sarah was telling Robert about her plan to become a detective like him, to help people and catch bad guys. He was encouraging her, telling her about the science classes she'd need to take. This was our new normal. Not perfect, not without pain, but real and honest and full of love. Daniel's killers had thought they were stealing a fortune, but they'd never understood true wealth. It wasn't in bank accounts or property values. It was in Sarah's laugh, in Robert's steady presence, in the memory of a son who'd faced death with courage. As we sat down to dinner, Sarah insisted on saying grace, something she'd started doing after Daniel's death. We held hands around the table. "Thank you for this food and for my family," she said. "Thank you for Grandpa who saved me and Uncle Robert who catches bad guys. And God, please tell Daddy I got 100 on my spelling test and that I'm being brave like he said." "Hummin'!" we said together. Later, after Sarah was asleep, Robert and I sat on the back porch. The night was quiet, peaceful, in a way it hadn't been for so long. "You did it, Dad," Robert said. "You got them all." "We did it," I corrected. "You, me, Frank, everyone who helped, but mostly Daniel did it. He gave us everything we needed." "Think Sarah will be okay." I thought about her laughter at dinner, her plans for the future, her resilience. "She's Daniel's daughter. She'll be more than okay." We sat in comfortable silence, two men who'd seen too much, but found hope anyway. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Sarah would have questions as she grew older. There would be parole hearings to attend, therapy to continue a young life to guide. But tonight we had peace. Justice had been served. Sarah was safe, and Daniel's memory lived on in the love we shared. As I headed to bed, I stopped by Sarah's room. She slept peacefully, the music box from her grandmother playing its gentle melody on her nightstand. On her wall hung a photo of Daniel holding her as a baby, both of them smiling. "We did it, son," I whispered. "She's safe. They can't hurt anyone else. Rest easy." The house settled around me, no longer feeling empty but full of possibility. Tomorrow Sarah had a school play. Next week, Robert was teaching her to ride a bike. Life moved forward, carrying us with it. Jessica had thought she was taking everything from us. Instead, she'd revealed the unbreakable bonds of family, the power of truth, the triumph of justice over greed. She'd spend the rest of her life in a cell, remembering the freedom she'd thrown away for money. But we would spend our lives honoring Daniel's memory by living fully, loving deeply, and always choosing truth. His sacrifice had saved us all, and we would make every day count. The tree we'd planted would grow strong and tall, its roots deep in the soil of our home. Like our family, it would weather storms and seasons, always reaching toward the light. Daniel would have liked that metaphor. He'd always been one for finding meaning in simple things. As sleep finally came, I felt at peace for the first time in months. The investigation was over. The trials were done. The killers were caged. Now came the harder work of healing, of building a future from the ashes of tragedy. But we would do it together. Grandfather, granddaughter, and uncle bound by love, stronger than any poison. Daniel's final gift hadn't just been evidence or insurance money. It had been the chance to save Sarah, to rebuild our family, to find light in the darkness. And that was worth more than all the money Jessica had tried to steal. It was worth everything. What would you do if you discovered a loved one was capable of murder for money? Could you find the strength to seek justice even while grieving? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to hear more stories of justice and redemption. Share it with someone who needs to hear that truth ultimately triumphs over deception. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you always have the courage to stand up for what's right, and may love guide you through your darkest hours. Until next time, hold your loved ones close and remember, the greatest inheritance we leave our children isn't money, but the example of how to live with integrity.